Hello, everybody. Good afternoon here at Six Roma Heroes International Theatre Festival, and also on a special day when we won't see a performance but have a common workshop and the opportunity to discuss. And usually our topics are related to Roma issues, and the performers and the participants are coming from the different countries of Europe, but now we make it wider, and we have panelists from the United States, so overseas, and this workshop can be also followed thanks to the whole round everywhere on the world, but we have also on-spot participants. And today's topic is the minorities self-representation in theater. And we have the pleasure to have here with us online three wonderful artists who are participants and representatives of the AAPAC, which means Asian American Performers Action Coalition. And I'm very glad that we have here Pan, Christine, and Nandita with us. And it will be an opportunity in the next a bit more 1 hour to discuss their work, but not only their work, but also about how you can refer to this topics of minorities representation. So before we give the floor to the speakers, I would like to ask you to introduce also yourself, just shortly your name, your profession or relation to the topic, and one stereotype which you think it's like a living stereotype about Asian people. And then I can start. I'm Martin, the Independent Theatre Hungary's operative leader. And we've been organizing this festival and workshop series for a while. And one stereotype which got to my mind, that it's hard to see what is the real feelings of Asian people, because many times they don't show it. As the first stereotype. And then I pass the floor to the...
Yeah, I see it's coming. So, good afternoon, guys. You can just call me Han, that's my name. And good afternoon to the other side. Yeah. So, I'm currently a master student, like first year master student in the major of communication and media studies, like my colleagues here. So, yeah. Yeah, it was like an honor to participate this workshop. And since, yeah, as you can see, kind of obviously that I'm also Asian. I come from China, by the way. It would be an interesting experience for me, I think, for us to talk about like how these minority groups and like how their participation in the, for example, American stage as a majority, I guess. So far, yeah. So we'll see. Thanks.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sako, and I also studied together with these guys, and I'm from Mongolia. And one stereotypes can be obedient, I guess. They think that Asian people are obedient, which is not true. We are quite rebel people, and also that can be represented in different kinds of places, I guess. Okay.
Okay, hi, my name is Salida, or you guys can call me Nuna. I'm from Laos, if you guys know where it is. Yes, thank goodness, because before, I think it was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I was like, I'm from Laos, and they were like, are you from Thai? Because we don't know where Laos is. That's what I faced a lot, even when I was in the US. And also, I'm a communication student and also an environmental journalist in Laos, of course. And I'm also a volunteer and an advocate for LGBTQ rights for youth in Laos. Yeah. Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Barna. I'm from Turkey. Like as you understand, same major, same class. So one stereotype from the Asian, I think the Asians are intelligent. Like it doesn't matter like where you're from, which Asian parts, you are intelligent. I think I don't know if it's true, but my classmates they are smart, so thank you. You're welcome. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Natalia Gleason-Nagy, and I'm a theatre director from Hungary. And one stereotype is that Asian people have an unconditional respect for their elders, I guess.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina. I am a journalist from Russia, and I'm also doing my master here. And I would like to continue the line of positive stereotypes about Asian people. And I think Asian people have amazing cuisine.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is André. I'm from Brazil. I'm also classmates with them. So, yeah. I think one stereotype is that Asian people, they are quite tidy and super well organized. And I think that that might be true because based on the people that I know from Asia, I think they're quite tidy as like indeed. So yeah, that's it.
Hi, I'm Panka. I'm a dramaturg and producer in theatre and film. And one stereotype I can think of is that Asian students always get straight A's.
Hi guys, my name is Richard. I'm a volunteer at Independent Theatre. And one stereotype is Asian people hardworking.
Hi, my name is Tamás Szegedi. I'm a theater artist, work a lot with the independent theater, and one stereotype in my mind, the Asian people so good in physical fight.
You mean martial arts? Hello everyone, my name is Ági Szabó. Currently I'm a student at the Linguistic Faculty of the ELTE University. I do have a theater background, and I will say two stereotypes because I'm a rebel and I know I was asked only to say one. So the first one is they are short, which I don't believe is true, but I've heard this as a stereotype. And the second is that they kill the math, like they are really good at the mathematics as a subject in a school. Thank you.
Hi, I am Ilona, teacher. The Chinese people usually are very diligent, too much diligent, and keep the laws. I don't know exactly.
So the gentleman beside me, his name is De Horváth Károly. He's an actor and artist. And the stereotype that he said that the Asian artisták, mint cirkuszi, that the Asian circus acrobats are very good and obedient. Hi, my name is Eva. I'm the project manager of Independent Theatre and occasional dramaturg. And the stereotype that I heard that Asian people are nerds and they don't have a sense of humor. The lady beside me, her name is Judit Jónás. She's a Hungarian Roma, and she's an actor. the stereotype that come to her mind was that the Asian people have an ancient medicine that she also wants to practice.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Rodrigo Balog, Artistic Director for the Independent Theatre Hungary. The stereotypes is good or not?
Hello everyone, my name is Adam and I'm from Hungary. I'm studying for my master's degree in theater studies, and the stereotype is that Asian women want love from Western men.
Hi, I'm Anna. I just started my master's in theater studies. I just started my master's in theater studies at ELTE. And the stereotype that comes to my mind is that Asian parents are very strict.
So hi, my name is Rika, nice to meet you. And I'm a freelance drama writer, studied in Romania, Târgu Mureș. And one stereotype which I have, that every Asian person has a selfie stick.
Hi, my name is Zita Sentetsky. I am a freelancer theater director, and I also teach in Artravalo, which is an organization for young adults from state care. And the stereotype may be the Asian people eating a lot of rice.
Hello, I'm Noemi Herzog, theater critic and researcher. And the stereotype about certain Asian people, like mostly Japanese, is that they live long.
Hello, I'm Timmy, and I work in the field of applied theater or theater in education. And one stereotype is that Asian people like weird pop music.
Hi, my name is András. I'm a local actor, and my stereotype is Asian people eat everything.
Thank you very much for introducing yourself. It's very nice. You came from very different professions and also countries, and also have a different level of your career. And at the beginning, I thought that after 4 or 5 stereotypes, the same will come back, and we won't have like 30 different stereotypes. But it seems we have a lot of them, so we can get rid of them. And there were also positive and negative stereotypes, but it's also a question that, are there really positive or negative stereotypes? Or is it better if a stereotype is positive or not? And now I give the floor to the speakers, Nandita and Christine, to present yourself and maybe also reflect on these stereotypes, if they are similar or different in the States, and how you might have faced with them in your professional work and also in your private life, but only if you want to mention it.
Sure. Thanks, Martin, and thank you everybody for all of that. I love the diversity that's in the room. And my name is Pun, and Christine and Nandita and I will get into it a little bit more. But first, I wanted to sort of bring into the room some visual images, because obviously these stereotypes that you're talking about come from somewhere, and especially if you're in countries that don't have large Asian populations. Usually it's Hollywood and TV and the film industry that sort of spreads these stereotypes. We're all actors as members of the Asian American Performers Action Coalition based here in New York City. I think we'll get into a good discussion about it. But first, I wanted to share with you a video that we had created a couple of years ago for an initiative that we had called Beyond Orientalism in order to change people's perspectives about Asian Americans. So let me just play you this video that we created. It's about 5 minutes long, and then we can get into a discussion after that.
You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell. You disturb me. You must have a key made.
I'm Raj, I'm a Bollywood producer. I'm looking for the most delicious thing on the planet.
Thank you so much for sharing those stereotypes. A lot of those stereotypes that you brought into the room were reflected in that video. And Martin asked the question: is there a difference between good stereotypes and bad stereotypes? A lot of the things that you mentioned were good. Asians are smart and get straight A's, but those those stereotypes that trap you into like one way of thinking about Asians does have an impact, because as you saw, many of the opportunities that there are for Asian actors, especially, that's what we're concerned about, had to do with us playing nerds all the time, or people who are marginal to the story, the sidekicks, the people who brought data and information, who were unfeeling, and the hero of the story, the person that you want to root for, is never someone who's unfeeling, and so we rarely get a chance to be the heroes of our own stories, as you saw with the example of Yellow. Between what they experience as marginalized people in Hungary and what Asians experience in America, when it comes to things like representation and increased opportunities, and where there are obstacles to us being able to achieve our dreams, and also the impact that has with society at large. One of the things that we do at AAPAC is we make the connection between the fact that when we are invisible and not seen on stages and screens and in society, when there aren't enough examples of people who break those stereotypes in order to widen and expand our perception of Asians, that affects how Asians are treated in America. There's a reason why the rise of anti-Asian hate in America recently under the Trump regime was allowed to take root, is because Asians are constantly othered and seen as foreigners. And so it was easy to sort of to have these stereotypes attached to a certain group of people that then led, there's a direct correlation between these stereotypes that we see and the violence against Asians that we saw in America. And not just recently, but also a long history of hundreds of years of violence against Asians. Christine, Andita, did you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's really, I can't tell you how thrilling it is to be in community with you all across the world, and to share a lot of the same thoughts and feelings. As Pun said, it's surprising but not surprising that a lot of the stereotypes you mentioned, the three of us were like, oh yeah, that's here too, that's universal, great. And I do feel like, to piggyback on what Pun was saying about the good and bad stereotypes, that whenever there are a set of expectations that are, this is what it is, and I think it's human nature that people want to be able to understand somebody that's different from themselves, and so it's very natural to say, okay, these are the things I know about a person, got it, I know what to do now. But I think that whenever there are those set expectations, it also puts a limitation on the perception of what a person can do and what the possibilities are, and that filters down into what roles we are expected to play, asked to play, and how we fit into the ecosystem of storytelling in America anyway. That's all I can speak to. And I know that Nandita and I are both playwrights as well, and so we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But that is one way that we're trying to break apart those expectations and limitations.
Hi, I'm Nandita, and I like Christine. I'm just really inspired by just the level of diversity that's in the room. And I'm so grateful to be in community with all of you today. And just to pick up on where Christine left off in terms of us being playwrights, I think that both of us started writing as a direct response to some of the stereotypes that were mentioned in the room today. I am also very struck by how similar they were. To be fair, I am short, but many of those stereotypes are not just limiting in what we can play, but what we are even seen for. I know that AAPAC actually started out of this real frustration of the limitations put on Asian actors of what we even had access to try to be. And for me personally, I'll just share that one stereotype that I faced in my career very often, and one that I think generally for Asian actors is that of a perpetual foreigner in America. And so I rarely auditioned with my own American accent. I was often asked to audition with an Indian accent, and I really started writing as a direct response to that, to have roles in which Asian people were also American and had American identities, because as you can see from the three of us and most of my Asian American friends have this accent. And it was really important to me to have that represented because I think in some ways those stereotypes can limit the way we are even seen as humans, just given a set of qualities as opposed to having curiosity about who we are as individuals. So I'm really glad that we're here and we can have this conversation together.
Thank you, guys. So just to set expectations for the next hour that we have you, or actually, no, sorry, the next 40 minutes. Chris, Nandita, and I are going to talk, we're going to split our discussion into two sections. The first one is just our own experiences as artists and, coming up against this bias in America. And some of the questions that we'll be looking at in this section are: what is the compounded effect on a group of people when those in the mainstream only view you based on your stereotypes? How does bias or racism affect your career opportunities and what you're able to do? How can artists change how they're perceived? And how can underrepresented artists empower themselves and their communities? And then the second part of it, for another, we'll do about 15 minutes each. The second part of it, we'll talk about AAPAC as a group and some of the things that we have accomplished in order to change perspectives and to actually increase representation for Asian artists in particular, but all artists of color, all members of the global majority, on New York City stages and across American stages. And one of the ways that we did that was we focused on data, and we'll talk about that at length later on as well. But we actually received a Tony honor, an honor from the Tony Awards committee in recognition of our ability to have changed diversity and increased diversity in the theater landscape in the past 10 years. So let's just kick it off about our experience as artists. Chris, Nandita, you already talked about what you had to do to expand your own artistry, to add more hyphenates to yourself as not just an actor, but also a writer who was able to tell to be able to control the story. And I'll just add to that as well that I face similar obstacles. I have to admit that I was born in Indonesia. I'm of Thai ancestry. And I came to America when I was 13. And so in some ways, even though I was a foreigner in Indonesia and experienced otherness to a certain extent, everyone around me was still Asian. The people in power were Asian. And so in some ways, I I thought of myself as part of the majority. And I actually don't like the term minority. This is a shift that's occurring in the U.S. right now, where a lot of people of color are kind of rejecting the term minority because one, it doesn't reflect reality. We are actually members of the global majority if you look at the population of the world, and we're only a minority because everything is so Western centric, at least in the U.S. And it's not, while the term minority may be just simply a term to talk about numbers and percentages, it actually has as its root verb, being less than, being minor, and it doesn't accurately portray what's happening. It's not as active as saying, as calling ourselves underrepresented or marginalized people. Really talking to sort of the system that exists that actually works to exclude us. Whether conscious or unconscious, there is bias that is at play. And so my experience was, because I didn't grow up in the US, I kind of I had the misbegotten notion that it would be different for me, that I would not be trapped by these stereotypes. And I was lucky enough to get into the Yale School of Drama, where for 3 years there was colorblind casting, and I was able to play, Hamlet, or all these roles that were not defined by the color of my skin. And it was such a shock to my system when I graduated. And as Nandita was saying, I would say like 60% of all of my auditions required an Asian accent. If I couldn't do a good Asian accent, I wouldn't be here today, and playing all these characters that were not me. And so yeah, that's just my personal trajectory. And so I actually then started producing a producing career as a way to sort of create more opportunities for myself. I started a small off-Broadway theater company. I started a film festival for Asian artists. And then I realized, wow, I love doing this. As we all have like we're all part of small theater companies. So, sort of, you had to be the press person and the marketing person and the advertising person and you had to sweep the floors and you had to do everything. But then I also found a path as a commercial producer as well. And I actually became one of the first Broadway producers of Asian descent to win multiple Tony Awards. And so that surprisingly, there's not a lot of bias when it comes to when you're offering money to people. And so there wasn't a lot of hurdles for me to become a producer necessarily, or a co-producer, and that opened up a lot of doors. But then in my acting career, I didn't see there was this constant wall. And I guess maybe because I was already like a Tony Award winning producer at that point, maybe I had more gumption or chutzpah to post on Facebook the fact that I was excited that I had my first audition at a theater company that I had been trying to get into for the longest time, because they focused on new work, which is my heart and where I live. And I was like, I'm just surprised that in 10 years after graduating from Yale, this is my first audition there. And I got this flood of responses from Facebook when I posted from other Asian actors who were like, yeah, I've never auditioned there either. And I've never auditioned at Lincoln Center or the Roundabout Theater, or, all these these amazing New York institutions that could actually change the trajectory of your career. This was coming from, you know, award-winning artists who had been doing theater for 30, 40 years, people that I really respected and admired, who were constantly just working on the margins off Broadway for lower salary, for, you know, unsustainable and unable to sustain a career. And I was like, is that what I'm working so hard to do, to accomplish, you know? And anyways, it became clear that we needed to come together as a group, and that was the founding of AAPAC 11 years ago.
Are you pointing? I can't tell. Are you pointing at me? Or...
Anyone that wants to, the floor is open.
Okay. So yeah, I'll go. It's on my screen. I'm in the middle of the two of you, so I'll go. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City. So I was very fortunate that I had Broadway in my backyard. That was the local theater to go see. And I was on the train all the time, going in to see every show I could and dreaming of being on Broadway and studying. I'm also a singer and dancer in my younger days. And so I interestingly did not have very many role models to watch on Broadway. And yet I still somehow thought that it would be a good idea to have that as my headline dream. For me, I started working professionally because I had access to auditions at a very young age. I have done 3 Broadway shows and 4 Broadway national tours, but it has been this journey of first of all, being surprised that the barriers were there when I first started, because I think as a child going to see Broadway, I saw Broadway. I didn't see stereotypes until I was confronted with that as a young professional. So seeing those stereotypes, seeing that I did not fit into what I call the long hair roles, which fit many of the stereotypes you have mentioned: submissive, frail, short. Sorry, Nandita. But you know, all of those things that were embodied in many of the roles that were available to us at the time. I started to set my sights on how I could play some of the golden age characters that were not available to us on Broadway, but started to become available more in theaters outside of Broadway. So I made a very conscious decision to work in those places, which also resulted in me not working on Broadway for many years, because the roles that I was right for were not. Somebody said the sidekick, I think, or maybe that was in our video. I'm a soprano. I was always a leading lady, so I wasn't fitting into the slot that we were often assigned to. That would be the acceptable person of color in this show could be the sidekick instead of the person who the story is about. So I wanted to mention that because I think that the part of my journey has been choosing where to work so that I could do the kind of work that I wanted to do, and then finding my advocacy voice early on. I found that it was important to show up and be in the room so that I could be part of the conversation. For many years, the diversity conversation was very binary. It was a very literally black and white conversation. And so through various leadership roles in my unions and my guilds, I found that I needed to be present and add to that conversation. And then also as a playwright, to create roles for not only for us, but to tell the stories that I wasn't seeing and I still am not seeing. Because part 2 of that is trying to make our own opportunities and make our work present, and confronting the expectations that many theaters in America still have about what people like us should be writing about, what stories we should be telling. And when we don't meet those expectations, how that pushes us aside again, and how when you're people like, I would say, I'm going to say this very confidently, the 3 of us, we do not take no for an answer. We charge ahead. We look for other windows in which to go through and have our voices heard. And I think that's why we've also bonded so strongly, along with our other 7 colleagues of AAPAC, to bring our voices into the forefront, express what we believe and how much we deserve to be part of the American landscape of storytelling in all its many facets. I'll stop there and pass it on to Nandita for now.
Hi there. Thank you so much for sharing both of those. It's fun to hear where you're all from originally, because I think of you so much as New Yorkers that I hang around with all the time. So I'll just say my parents are Indian and immigrated to Buffalo, New York, upstate New York, before I was born. So I was born in Buffalo, and my first Broadway show that I saw was the national tour of Annie, and I was really excited because there were young girls who kind of reminded me of myself on stage. And I don't think I got the idea then that like I should be in theater, but it was always something that was really exciting to me. I went to Yale undergraduate, Yale College, and I was an English major. And it wasn't until about halfway through that I realized I wanted to pursue a career in performing, and I specifically was a dancer. So I moved to New York to become a dancer, and I worked in musicals for a very long time. I did a national tour of The King and I, which was a great experience, and I had a really wonderful time, but it also, the show itself relies on a lot of stereotypes. After 3 productions of that show, I realized I just couldn't do it anymore, because it required us to be the female chorus, particularly to be so submissive. As a dancer, I was, literally crawling on the floor anytime the king was on stage, and it became kind of just like personally depressing to me to do that. And I did it for over 1,000 performances. The other thing that happened that I wasn't really planning on sharing, but there was a Broadway show called Bombay Dreams that came into New York, and I auditioned for it. Up until that time, I'd been the only Indian woman I'd ever seen at a dance audition. And so I felt pretty good about going into this audition, and I was cut immediately and told that I wasn't womanly enough to be in the show. Both of my parents are from Bombay, and so it was deeply distressing to me to find out that I wasn't suitable to play an Indian woman from Bombay. That really changed the trajectory of my career. And it speaks to the kind of harm that stereotypes can create. It was a fully white creative team that made those decisions about who could play what in that show. And it was like, that was a real turning point in my career. At that time, it was extremely devastating and personally awful. But I think because of that, it changed what I looked at. As Christine said, we don't take no for an answer. And so I shifted my perspective and started pursuing acting in plays where I could actually get to say something about the kinds of situations I was in. And that's actually when I met Pun. Right after that whole incident. So it really moved things in a different way. And I'm really grateful now for that crazy shift, because I get to do so many more exciting things than what I had even imagined for myself at that time. And as I said before, pursuing a career as an actor just revealed even more to me how we were seen and what we were allowed to be seen as. And so I did start writing actively to combat those roles. The other thing is that as an Asian American playwright, I have felt very free and happy that my voice can be added to the conversation, but I also feel that there are certain kinds of expectations of what I should write as an Asian American woman in particular. So my mandate to myself has always been to have more people of color than white people on stage and more women than men on stage, not because I don't like anybody, but because I feel that those are the roles that are not seen and accessible on our stages, both on Broadway, off Broadway, across the country. So it's really important to me to at least put those images out there. But to speak to Christine's last point, then of course getting produced is another obstacle that we are always constantly forcing ourselves into conversations and trying to be part of the programming of what is the American theater. And my experience, at least, has been that often theaters have like one slot that they want to program in a diverse way. So then that often pits us against each other, as opposed to picking a season of, 5 good plays that may or may not be by women or people of color, or even to have 2 Asian playwrights in the same season is very unusual. So, those are the kinds of obstacles or barriers that we come up against as artists of color, and particularly as Asian American artists. So I'll leave it there.
You guys have both done so many amazing things to empower yourselves and your community and to expand your idea of yourself as an artist. And we'll start segueing into what can be done about this situation, these barriers that we've all talked about. I'll shift back to that first meeting of AAPAC when it was clear that everybody felt the same way. First of all, that was really empowering to hear and see that, because as much as we talk with each other and stuff like that, I think the experience of being an underrepresented group is that you feel, as I said, I don't like to use this word, but there is minority thinking. You think of yourself as sort of like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense that we don't see ourselves that often because we're not, the majority in America, but this was also happening when Asian Americans were actually the fastest growing group in America. And in New York, we were like 13% of the city. Or you were thinking, maybe I haven't worked hard enough, or I can't complain. I should be grateful for the roles that I do get and that I'm able to have an acting career, and that those people in power, they really do pray, as Nandita was saying, about like having people of color compete against each other, and for those few scraps that are left over. And so nobody was speaking out. Nobody wanted to be the difficult actor, or to be like blackballed by the community, because this was the way things were. And so one of the things that we realized we needed was that there wasn't really a tool, a resource at the time that actually looked at the statistics for how often people of color were cast on New York City stages. And so we actually had to do the difficult work of creating our own statistics. The information was out there. We could see what theater companies had produced in their last season, but no one had really sort of counted up, okay, how many white actors were hired, how many Black actors were hired, Latino, Middle Eastern, Native American, Asians. And And so we did that work, and the numbers were staggering. The numbers speak for themselves. And in a way, it woke the industry up. In 2011, we decided to count the previous 5 seasons. And in those 5 years, Asians were only like 1% of all Broadway roles in 5 years, and there was a reason why I hadn't never auditioned for this theater company in 10 years. They had only produced 2 plays written by Asians, and one of them only required female roles, and so those statistics were really eye-opening. And casting directors, for instance, said, wow, I thought I was doing a good job at doing colorblind casting, but obviously I need to do a better job. And we brought people together to have forums, directors, producers, all the stakeholders, writers, agents, to talk about why this was happening. And the statistics became this, we got great press for it. It actually became a nationwide conversation. And we then became involved in a series of actions that was happening at the same time. This kind of coincided with, this feeling of like, the beginnings of talking about diversity and increased diversity in America 10 years ago. Because as it may come as a surprise, actually, I think Martin was saying when we were talking to him before that like, he was under the impression that American theater was so diverse, and our statistics proved that wrong. And so there was one occasion where there was a workshop of a Broadway musical that was trying to get to Broadway out in California, based on the Hans Christian Andersen story of The Nightingale, which takes place in China. And in a cast of 17, they ended up casting only 2 Asian actors in very tangential roles, including the role of the Nightingale, who's in a cage the entire time, and so, and Christine actually flew out to Los Angeles, to La Jolla, to be part of that conversation to change these creators' perspectives. Chris, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, wow. It's Cindy Chung and I, another one of our colleagues from APAC, and I happen to be the 2 of the people in the group that were available to go, and so we went, and it was very eye-opening and deeply emotional, actually, because first of all, we weren't allowed to sit together. I'm not sure why, but they put us in two different areas of the theater. And I just remember thinking there were no Asian males in the cast. The only representation of the Asian males in the show were puppets, and small puppets with coolie hats on. And so I became so emotional about feeling like, what message am I supposed to get from that? What am I supposed to feel about our representation and this story? But I could talk about that for much too long, and we don't have that much time left. But I do want to say that I think to add on to what Pun was saying about some of the work that we've been able to do at APAC has come from there are 10 of us on the steering committee. We are all working actors and working writers and working professionals. And I think our approach to these conversations have always been about looking for, I'm going to coin to echo what Pun usually says, is actionable solutions. So instead of putting people on the defensive, not being easy on them, but instead of the goal being to put them on the defensive, the goal is to try to find actionable solutions to the challenges and the issues that we are witnessing. So from that, the situations like the one at La Jolla, we have been able to bring our data and bring our experiences into the room with major New York City theaters and have conversations where we say, this is what's happening. The numbers don't lie. We would like to talk to you about how we can break through that. How can we work together and build a better theater because it's more inclusive and it represents the actual world or even actual country we live in stories that that might not specifically even be Asian American, but that reflect the fact that we exist in the world of the story.
And check
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, so I just wanted to add that in as I think one of the strengths that APAC has had, and in our ability to shift the needle, move the needle, is these kinds of conversations that are substantively collaborative, that really seek to break down barriers.
I just wanted to dovetail what Chris was saying about these conversations we have with stakeholders, and sometimes they're in private, closed door sessions when we go to theater companies, and we're like, "These were your statistics last year. Are you aware that there were no Asians cast last year? Why is that? And how can we help you?" And we would hear things like, "Well, we can't find the Asian actor." Okay, great. Let's let's isolate what the problem is. And the reason why the Nightingale conversation was such a nationwide topic in the American theater, why it was because the creatives actually had good intentions. They wanted to create a multicultural landscape that, according to Stephen Sater, the writer, reflected the world that they live in. So Duncan Sheik, the composer, said, this show is not about Asia. And the director, Moises Kaufman, said, this is a mythical China. It's based on a fairy tale. And so, and so the idea was to have a multicultural cast. Not a lot of people could find fault with that. But it took a lot of nerve, I think, and energy, and actors converged onto La Jolla in California and went from Los Angeles to protest, and because we, as Chris and Cindy made so eloquently in this panel that they were forced to hold because of all of the protests. There is no such thing as a mythical China. China is a real place, and not everyone gets to play Martin Luther King Jr. as a character. Not everyone gets to play the Emperor of China. These are roles that we are uniquely suited to play. And here are the statistics that back that up to say that, we're not represented elsewhere. You're not giving us the roles of Hamlet, and so here's a role we can play. This is about equal opportunity. This is about not just about equal opportunity, but also about who gets to tell these stories. And so that really shifted perspectives in the theater industry, in terms of this our invisibility and our lack of representation within the industry, and we became sort of a force against yellowface in particular, that was still rampant within the industry. Here's some pictures of the Nightingale, and also we protested against a theater company on Broadway that produced on Broadway, the Roundabout Theater Company, in 2013, which actually is not that long ago, where The Mystery of Edwin Drood was on Broadway, the musical, and there were two South Asian characters that were played by white actors in brown face, with the Indian accent, with the gesticulations, and Aditya, maybe you can talk about that. But for me, it was such an alienating experience to be in a Broadway theater with everyone laughing and thinking it was so funny, and I was horrified.
I mean, I'll just say that I didn't go to that show specifically for that reason, because I was like, I don't need to just participate in that. But I did want to just harken back to something you said earlier, Pun, about the formation of AAPAC that I think might be of use or interest to all of you at the independent theater. And that when that conversation started, I still remember that Facebook post so vividly that started AAPAC, because for me personally, I had always thought that I wasn't invited into those rooms, that it was just happening to me. And that, you know, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't working hard enough. I didn't have enough training. I was, you know, any number of shortcomings on myself personally were the reasons why I had no access to better opportunities. And that Facebook thread, in which almost every single Asian American actor that I know, and I know a lot, had participated in this discussion. And it was like a light bulb went off for me, that I was like, I'm not alone. This isn't just happening to me. And I think that there is so much power in coming together and acknowledging things that are happening, because, you know, we all face individual obstacles. Obviously, being an actor is not a guarantee of a secure life in any way, shape, or form for anybody. But I think that there is power in numbers. And as we have shown both literally and figuratively, having data is helpful, and having a group of people who are sharing an experience can be really comforting and also strengthening and empowering.
I know we're running out of time, and we want to get your thoughts in here as well. So let's just pivot to a discussion. And Martin, if you can hand the microphone to any, does anyone have any questions right now? Raise your hands, please, and Martin will come to you.
So meanwhile, you're thinking about your questions. You mentioned the statistics that there are like different ratio of the actual population of New York and the representation in the theaters. And could you share some of this? That how much is it like, or does it change, or? Yeah.
There we go. There we go. Great question, Martin. So yeah, things have changed in the 13 years that we've been around. In fact, here's our last report. You can see that, you know, as I said before, Asians were only 1% of all of Broadway in like 5 years, in 2006 to 2011, and in 2018-19 that jumped to 6.3%. So our work made a difference. But still, even then, white actors were still about like 2/3 of all roles, especially on Broadway versus the nonprofit theaters. White actors were still about 66% of all available roles. And surprisingly, like, it's not just Asians that are experiencing this. People think that, you know, as Chris was saying, racism in America is a binary issue. It's usually a black and white issue. But when we first started, Black actors were only like 9% of all roles in the 5 years on Broadway. And then that has jumped now to about a quarter of those roles are now cast with Black people. But that actors are very visible, right? The people behind the stages, as Nandita was saying, who gets produced is very different. And you know, we found that white actors in the industry were being hired at a rate of about 81.3% of the industry was made up of white actors, white writers. And there was a stark difference between writers in the not-for-profit theater companies as opposed to on Broadway as well. On Broadway, 94% of writers were white. Same with directors. On Broadway, almost like 90% of all directors were white. So, you know,
Hun,
not
can
only.
I just, sorry, can I just add one little statistic that is very depressing? But I think it shows something, that there are 2 Asian American women writers, 2 Asian American women writers who have been produced on Broadway in the last 120 years. And that has all been in the last 6 or 7 years. Young Jean Lee, with her play even called Straight White Men, and Helen Park.
Cast of 12 white men.
Right, Helen Park, who wrote the music to K-pop. So I just wanted to throw that in as, whoa, you know, that is something that affects the perspective, I think, on all of this. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to throw that in.
No, that's basically the answer to your question, Martin, is that things have changed materially, you know, in the 13 years, but it's not nearly enough for our taste, as you can see from the stats. Anyone else?
Thank you. Any?
Yeah, my question is that I had a brief interaction with like the Writers and the Directors Guild, but what my experience was is that they don't really count into any of these processes, like on a policy level. And I was just wondering if there's anything that you could achieve over the past years, or is there any plan for, you know, hitting on the policy level somehow?
I'm not sure what you mean by the policy level. Do you mean
like decision making, or like the system could change? No, you mean like, yeah, like the representation or something. So not only practice level, but anything which can do like structural changes.
I think some of what our work has been some of those closed door meetings that Pun was talking about. And I just want to share that often we are invited to those meetings rather than us knocking on doors and saying, you know, you must talk to us. We publish our statistics. They are public. They are, you know, the report comes out, and generally there's, you know, a discussion about it in many different circles. And then sometimes we get invited to talk about our reports. You know, Pun and I have had some very interesting conversations about, well, why it was this way, you know, because often the parties that are maybe shown to not have the diversity that they say they do, you know, or feel affronted in some way, will say, well, this is why. And then we offer our suggestions and solutions to make a change. So maybe that speaks a little bit to policy. And I also think that all of us trying to inhabit roles outside of acting, because I feel comfortable saying that actors are the least empowered people in the room generally, you know, that being a little bit higher in the chain of command can offer some opportunity to influence. But you know, it's a very long road.
Thank you.
Chris is actually a member of the Dramatist Guild and also serves on the Equity Council. And so she's in a very unique position in terms of understanding sort of like what those guilds are able to do. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I'm no longer a member of the Council of Equity. I left in 2020, but I am the treasurer of the Dramatist Guild, and we're the trade association for not a union, but a guild for theater writers. So playwrights, composers, lyricists, librettists who write for the theater in America. And yeah, I think that to echo what Nandita was saying, it is a multi-layered process that begins, I think, with opening up these conversations. I would say that 99% of the people I've ever met in the American theater want to have a diverse way of storytelling. They may not know how to get there. They may have a more limited perspective on what that means than what I would hope. But because of those interactions and that and finding that that is true, the first action feels like getting into the room with them and opening up the conversation. And then we have been working at AAPAC, we've been working on an initiative right now to canvass the experiences of our community and put them into some sort of document, that's not probably the right word, but to help theaters across the country know what the issues are that we're facing and suggesting ways that they might be able to address those. So that's another way, I think, of addressing the issues and breaking down some of those barriers. But Pun, you asked me about what the unions and guilds can actually do. I think it's really, it is more of that on a higher level because of it's an institutional level. I mean, we are a grassroots AAPAC grassroots organization. We get in there and we get our hands in there and try to do what we can. But we are also not nobody is paid. It is it's not our full-time job, and so I think that, although sometimes it feels like it, I'm not answering your question really well, I don't think, Pun, but I think it does have to do with 100% with nurturing those relationships and cracking open the difficult conversations and trying to figure out new strategies, because the old model is not helpful anymore.
But Chris, just to toot your horn. Oh, sorry. I just want to give Chris some credit, and that she's not taking for herself on the union level, and the work that I think the unions and guilds have done in terms of policy is creating contract language that is more inclusive. And I think that's something that has really moved considerably in the last 10, 11 years, in terms of, creating a inclusive environment, of having ways to report harassment or untoward behavior. Also, recently the Actors Union has been adding contract language about how to maintain and take care of different actors' hair, because it was not a given that you would have hair and makeup who were able to make, to help you with your hair and makeup, because they weren't aware of the particular issues that different races had with these types of items. So I think that, again, it's a slow process, but I think that's a really substantive way that policy is being influenced. And it's because we are participating in our unions, in our guilds, and making noise on that level.
And I just wanted to also say that, like, oftentimes we work with the Directors Guild, for instance. They've started to create their own statistics and hiring statistics as well as a result of our report, and we've been partnering with them on that. But the problem is that they can't necessarily, while they're working to increase the diversity of their membership, they can't necessarily ask a theater company, why aren't you hiring more directors of color? The problem is, first of all, you can't dictate who a theater company hires. And then secondly, a lot of the artistic directors who are making those decisions are also members of the Directors Guild. So the guild itself can't seek to support certain members of their guild over the interests of other members of their guild. And we have time for, I think, one more question.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other last question, comment? No?
Thank you so much. First, can you hear? So actually, I was just inspired by the previous girl's question. So I was just thinking about a topic came to my mind. It was about the audience group. I feel like those, for example, when the producers or directors are trying to initiate a new project, for example, they must analyze this audience group, for example. And I feel like it's highly related to this like whole society situation, and also like the education, for example, like all the elements. Because I feel like, for example, I think for Broadway, the most majority in the audience might be the white people. That's for sure. Like, for example, 30, 40 years old ladies might be, like, no offense, just I guess. Yeah, so I guess maybe when they trying to searching for the cast and like initiate this whole project, they must consider a lot of elements about the audience group, maybe like the whole society. Yeah, that's.
I think that's very a vicious circle, as we say, because you are correct. I mean, that's the demographic of Broadway for sure. But who's to say how many people aren't going to the theater because they aren't seeing themselves on stage, they aren't seeing their stories, they don't feel welcomed in, they don't feel like they belong? I think that's a big question in American theater. How do we create these radically inclusive spaces that not only include stories that tell a wide variety of experiences, but that where the theaters are really going the extra mile or 500 miles to make sure that audiences feel like there's a place for them to see themselves reflected.
Exactly. And I'll also add that we're also making a big assumption if we think that white theater audiences aren't willing to pay and aren't interested in stories that are different from their own experience, you know. And in fact, I'll tell you, we can track these trends because of the report. We also track sort of colorblind casting, or we call it inclusive casting, and those numbers didn't budge. And the numbers for the increase of hiring actors of color didn't budge for like 10 years until Hamilton on Broadway in 2015 showed that white audiences were willing to pay top dollar for a predominantly global majority cast, you know, and also there's a lot of like tourism is like 60% of Broadway ticket sales. So they want to expand that. And then the year after that, you could see that like the hiring of actors of color on Broadway skyrocketed. However, they were still in very featured roles, or they were never really the lead characters, but they were always like a lot of chorus members were added to be people of color. So that's still an issue that we have to work on. Nandita, do you want to get the last word on this?
Sure. I also just want to offer that when Pun asked me what I thought about Edwin Drood, I didn't go because of that, because of the casting. And I think it's worth also noting that you can have a negative effect by the kinds of programming that you do. Currently there's such a conversation in the American theater about, you know, is theater dead? How are we coming back from the pandemic? And, you know, and how can we encourage new audiences, younger audiences? I'll say that our audiences are not 30 to 40-year-old women. You know, they skew a bit older, and the hope is that we can bring younger people into the audience. And I think that what you put on stage can have an effect to bring those newer audiences in who want to see not just their own stories, but an accurate reflection of the world around them. And in New York, it is very diverse. I don't walk around and not see people who are different than me and all kinds of different from me all the time.
Great point to end on. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much. It was very nice to listen to your stories and how you became as a group, because I think it's very important that when we all face similar challenges one by one, then we don't stay isolated, but also find other partners, because together we are stronger. And also I think there are a lot of similar aspects which we have been also doing a series of workshops on Roma theater representation in Hungary, that also like being left out totally or being put in stereotypical situations, and also being put maybe only as performers, but not in the creators as writers or directors who can really lead the direction of play. And maybe this topic which came out at the last time, that we can also have influence on the audience, and maybe it can also bring like new market for the producers, can be also a practical and not only an ethical argument for the future, for the producers themselves. And we wish you a very good work in the future as well. It was very nice to have you here today, Pan Christine and Nandita. And yeah, and we are coming back to our festival now. And thank you for the support of the Embassy of the United States of America and Creative Europe to organize also the festival and this event. And the audiences of all around can't be here in person on the festival, but we hope that in the beginning of next year you can see also the ongoing performances streamed on all around. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.